Good morning and welcome to the daily chapter reading of Deepak Chopra. I couldn't even do it justice, however. Restful awareness is the first step away from outside forces. This response brings inner calm in the face of chaos or threats. Return to prayer or meditation. The intuitive response calls upon the inner world for more than peace and calm. We ask inside for answers and solutions. This state is associated with synchronicity, flashes of insight, and religious awakening. The creative response breaks free from old patterns. It gives up the known to explore the unknown. Creativity is synonymous with the flow of inspiration. The visionary response embraces the universal me in place of the isolated ego. It looks beyond all boundaries and is not fixed by the laws of nature that limit earlier stages. Miracles become possible for the first time. This response guides prophets, seers, and healers. The sacred response is completely free of all limitations. It is experienced as pure bliss, pure intelligence, pure being. At this stage, God is universal and so is the person. This response marks the fully enlightened of every age. Each of these is a natural response of the human nervous system, and we are all born with the ability to experience the entire range. In the face of danger, a burst of adrenaline creates the overwhelming urge to flee or to fight. When this response is triggered, all kinds of changes take place in the physiology, including increased heart rate, ragged breathing, elevated blood pressure, etc. But if we sit down to meditate, this isn't the state of the nervous system, far from it. The same indicators that were elevated in fight or flight are now decreased, and the subjective feeling is that of peace and calm. These are well-documented facts medically, but I wish to take a step further, and it is a startling step. I contend that the brain responds uniquely in every phase of spiritual life. Scientific research is incomplete at the higher stages of inner growth, but we know that where the spirit leads, the body follows. Faith healers do exist who transcend medical explanation. Only a few miles from where I was in the Himalayas, yogis sit in trances for days at a time. Others can be buried for a week in an almost airless box or bring their breathing and heart rates down to nearly zero. Saints in every religion have been observed to live on little or no food, many of them declaring that they survive solely on the light of God. Visions of God have been so credible that their wisdom moved and guided the lives of millions. Extraordinary acts of selflessness and compassion prove that the mind is not ruled by self-interest alone. We select a deity based on our interpretation of reality, and that interpretation is rooted in biology. The ancient Vedic seers put it quite bluntly: the world is as we are. To someone living in a world of threat, the need for fight or flight is absolute. This pertains to a Neanderthal facing a saber-toothed tiger, a soldier in the trenches in World War I, or a driver frustrated with road rage on the Los Angeles freeways. We can match each biological response, in fact, with a specific self-image. Response, fight or flight response. Identity is based on physical body, physical environment. Reactive, ego and personality. Restful awareness response, silent witness. Intuitive response, the knower within. Creative response, co-creator with God. Visionary response, enlightenment. Sacred response, the source of all. Looking at the right-hand column, you have a clear outline of the stages of human growth. The fact that we are born with the potential to go from simple survival to God consciousness is the remarkable trait that sets our nervous system apart from all creatures. It is undeniable that complete inner growth is a tremendous challenge. If you are trapped in traffic, blood boiling with frustration, higher thoughts are blocked out. At that moment, under the influence of adrenaline, you identify with being confined and unable to do anything. In a different situation, when you are competing for a promotion at work, you see things from the ego's point of view. Now your anxiety isn't over survival, which is the root of the fight or flight response in animals, but getting ahead. Once again, higher responses are blocked. You would be ruining your chances if you stopped competing and felt only love for the other candidates for the job. Change the response once more, and this viewpoint will also fade away. When you see a news report about dying children in Africa or a needless war somewhere far away, you may find yourself wanting to find a creative solution to the problem, or you may just reflect internally on the pointlessness of suffering. These higher responses are subtler and more delicate. We also call them more spiritual, but in any situation, the brain is responding from the highest level it can. The deeper mystery, which we will explore in this part of the book, centers on our ability to rise from an animal instinct to sainthood. Is this possible for everyone, or is the potential there only for the tiniest fraction of humanity? We will only find out by examining what each stage means and how a person rises up the ladder of inner growth. Despite the enormous flexibility of the nervous system, we fall into habits and repeated patterns because of our reliance on old imprints. This is never more true than with our beliefs. I was once walking down a side street in the old section of Cairo when a man jumped out of the shadows and began ranting at some passerby. Not knowing Arabic, I had no idea what he was preaching, but it was obvious from the vexation and rage in his face that his sermon had to do with fear of God. In every religion, there is the same streak of fear whenever a person is certain that the world is dominated by threat, danger, and sin. Yet every religion also contains the strain of love whenever the world is perceived as abundant, loving, and nourishing. It is all projection. I am not finding fault here. We have the right to worship, love, mercy, compassion, truth, and justice on the transcendent level, just as we have the right to fear judgment and divine rebuke. If you accept that the world is as we are, it is only logical to accept that God is as we are. God the Protector fits a world of bare survival, full of physical threats and danger. God the Almighty fits a world of power struggles and ambition where fierce competition rules. A God of peace fits a world of inner solitude where reflection and contemplation are possible. God of the Redeemer fits a world where personal growth is encouraged and insights prove fruitful. God the Creator fits a world that is constantly renewing itself where innovation and discovery are valued. A God of miracle fits a world that contains prophets and seers where spiritual vision is nurtured. A God of pure being, I am, fits a world that transcends all boundaries, a world of infinite possibilities. The wonder is that the human nervous system can operate on so many planes. We don't just navigate these dimensions, we explore them, meld them together, and create new worlds around ourselves. If you do not understand that you are multidimensional, then the whole notion of God runs off the rails. I remember as a boy that my mother once prayed for a sign or message from God. I believe she had had a dream that affected her deeply. One day the kitchen door was left open and a large cobra crawled in. When my mother encountered it, she didn't scream or cry out, but fell to her knees in reverence. To her, this snake was Shiva, and her prayers had been answered. Notice how much her response to this incident depends on interpretation. If you don't believe that Shiva can appear as an animal, it would seem crazy to revere a cobra, not to mention superstitious and primitive. But if all of nature expresses God, then we can choose which symbols express him best. I know one thing, I cannot share anyone else's consciousness. As much as I love my mother, her response is private and unique. What was a glorious symbol of God to her may frighten and repulse others. I can remember many days sitting in school under the tutelage of Catholic brothers, wondering why anyone would kneel before the horrifying image of the crucifixion. I was testing these key ideas with the group when a woman objected. I don't understand this word projection. Are you saying that we just make God up? She asked. Yes and no, I replied. A projection is different from a hallucination, which has no reality at all. A projection originates inside you, the observer, and therefore it defines your perception of reality. It is your take on infinity. Which would make God just a comment about me, she asked. God cannot be just about you, but the portion of him that you perceive must be about you, because you are using your own brain and senses and memory. Since you are the observer, it is all right to see him through an image that is meaningful to you. I thought of St. Paul's most telling line about the role of the observer. Now we see as through a glass darkly. The passage is easier to understand if we set aside the King James poetry in favor of modern English. When I was a child, I spoke and saw things like a child. When I grew up, I had finished with childish things. Right now, we all see puzzling reflections as in a cloud mirror. But then, when we meet God, we shall see face to face. My knowledge now is partial. Then it will be the whole, the way God knows me already. The standard interpretation is that when we are confined to a physical body, our perception is dim. Only on the day of judgment, when we meet God directly, will our perception be pure enough to see who He is and who we are. But that isn't the only way to interpret the passage. Paul could be making the point that the observer who is attempting to see who God is winds up seeing his own reflection. Since there is no way around this limitation, we have to make the best use of it that we can. Like a child growing up, we have to evolve towards a more complete vision until the day arrives when we can see the whole as God does. Our self-reflections tell our own story along the way, usually in symbolic form as dreams do, hence the cloud mirror. Reality itself may be only a symbol for the workings of God's mind, and in that case the primitive belief, found throughout the ancient and pagan world, that God exists in every blade of grass, every creature, and even the earth and the sky, may contain the highest truth. Arriving at that truth is the purpose of spiritual life, and each stage of God takes us on a journey whose end point is total clarity, a sense of peace that nothing can disturb.